Hey friends, tonight we're going to look at whether or not Judas had a choice in regards to betraying Jesus. So if you're interested in that topic, stay tuned. Guys, I just want to welcome you to the HomeGrown Ministries YouTube channel. I hope you're all doing well today. If this is your first time here, I'm DJ, and on this channel I strive to provide you with biblical wisdom and encouragement to strengthen your walk of faith. So if you like what you see here, please make sure you hit that subscribe button down below so you don't miss any content in the future. It also helps out the channel a great deal, and I really appreciate your support. Now, before we dive into the text, I want to talk about where we're at. If you'd like to watch all of the Bible studies in regards to the Gospel of John, you can find a link to that playlist right here. But the Cliff Notes version is Jesus just took the status of a servant and washed all of his disciples' feet. Now, this includes Judas. After he does that, he then predicts Judas's betrayal, which is what we're going to see in the text tonight. So I'm going to be reading from John chapter 13, verses 18 through 30. I'm going to be reading from the NIV version, and I will put the words on the screen for you. You can read from whatever version you'd like. If you'd like to read along with me, by all means do so. If you want to read on your own, that's fine. Skip about a minute ahead, and I'll see you on the discussion side. So for those of you that are reading with me, let's dive into the Gospel of John now. I am not referring to all of you. I know those I have chosen, but this is to fulfill this passage of Scripture. He who shared my bread has turned against me. I am telling you now before it happens, so that when it does happen, you will believe that I am who I am. Very truly I tell you, whoever accepts anyone I send accepts me, and whoever accepts me accepts the one who sent me. After he had said this, Jesus was troubled in spirit and testified, Very truly I tell you, one of you is going to betray me. His disciples stared at one another, at a loss to know which of them he meant. One of them, the disciple whom Jesus loved, was reclining next to him. Simon Peter motioned to this disciple and said, Ask him which one he means. Leaning back against Jesus, he asked him, Lord, who is it? Jesus answered, It is the one to whom I will give this piece of bread when I have dipped it in the dish. Then dipping the piece of bread, he gave it to Judas, the son of Simon Iscariot. As soon as Judas took the bread, Satan entered into him. So Jesus told him, What you are about to do, do quickly. But no one at the meal understood why Jesus said this to him. Since Judas had charge of the money, some thought Jesus was telling him to buy what was needed for the festival, or to give something to the poor. As soon as Judas had taken the bread, he went out, and it was night. So again, the first thing I want to point out, I talked about this a little bit at the start of this video, is that Jesus knew that Judas would betray him, and he still chose to serve him. He still chose to wash his feet, and that speaks volumes in regards to what we should do as Christians. If Jesus is supposed to be our example, we should be serving those who are against us, those people who have harmed us or done us wrong. That shouldn't matter and shouldn't affect the way that we treat them, because Jesus didn't let it affect how he treated Judas. And the next thing I want you to notice, and I don't want you to miss this, is that this is another text in the Gospel of John where Jesus is claiming to be God. He says, I'm telling you this about this prediction so that you will know that I am who I am. Again, the Jews of the day understood that I am meant God. So he's claiming to be I am, or he's claiming to be God, and that's super powerful. I just don't want you to miss it. Now, the other crazy thing here is that even though Jesus knew that Judas would betray him, it still broke his heart. I'll tell you what, between you and me, if I knew someone was going to betray me, screw him. Not very Christian of me, see? Sinner. But the point here is that Jesus knew, but Jesus still wanted to offer him forgiveness, offer him a chance to turn around and change his mind. And it broke his heart because he knew what the final outcome was, because he knows everything. Now, in the middle of all this, the other cool thing we see is that John is really showing his humility. He mentions every other apostle by name throughout his book, but he omits himself. He talks about himself as the one whom Jesus loved. And because of that, because he knows his status, he is being humble about it, not saying the one whom Jesus loved, which was John, by the way, that's me. He doesn't say that at all. He omits his name due to his humility. Now, I don't know about you, but there's another situation, not very Christian of me, DJ, but I would be tooting my oon horn. Toot toot! I'd be like, Jesus, I'm his favorite. But again, it's not what John does. Not really relevant to the whole story, but it's something that I like to point out because, again, it's an example for how we as Christians should behave and act when we have struggles with pride. I myself, chief among them in regards to sinners in the pride area, but I'm working on it. Now, Jesus makes this prediction based on the fact that he knows Judas is going to betray him, but he still gives him another opportunity because, again, we have free will. Jesus essentially says to the 12, I know one of you is going to betray me. And he does this as an attempt to say, Judas, I know what you're up to. Stop it. Now again, that's a DJism, that's a DJ translation. Don't take that for gospel truth. But the idea here is that he's essentially trying a last-ditch effort to prevent Judas from doing this. Now, the question is, why? And it's because God created a world in which we are moral creatures, have the ability to choose right from wrong, and that means that we have the ability to choose to love or rebel against God. If it was any other way, if Jesus were to stop Judas and say, listen, you're not doing that, well then Judas is now just a robot, and he is not able to love. He's not able to freely choose to love God. You see, women out here, I think this is an analogy that you can relate to. If there's a man that pursues you and continues to pursue you and continues to pursue you and you have no interest in this man, and eventually one day he comes to you and says, you know what, woman, you're gonna love me and I'm gonna make it happen. Can he do that? And the answer is no. He can't force you to love him. He just can't do that because love has to be freely given. So although God is completely sovereign and God knows everything about you, he can force you to obey him. His typical position is to not to, because if he does, then you don't have choice. And if you don't have choice, you can't love. As we saw in the last Bible study, Jesus says, he who has the greatest forgiveness has the greatest love. And that's what this is really all about, is that we have to understand our sin and our inability to redeem ourselves with God. But when we make that realization, we also then realize our need for forgiveness. And when that forgiveness is given to us, it changes our lives because we realized our need. And now we are indebted and thankful for the gift that we've been given that we did not deserve. The other thing I want to point out is that Jesus has what I call the 50-20 vision. And this can be pertained to lots of bad things. So the 50-20 vision, if you didn't watch the video that I made about that, this is referring to Genesis chapter 50 verse 20. This is at the end of Joseph's story. Joseph was sold into slavery by his brothers. Lots of bad things happen, but he ends up getting to a position of power in Egypt, and he saves the Israelites from famine. And when his brothers come to him, he says, you meant this for evil, but God meant it for good. And a lot of times we look at things in our life and say, there is so much evil in this world. Why does God let this stuff happen? But we don't understand everything that God understands, and we don't see the ripple effect. What is bad to me today might shape my life and make me do wonderful things later. It might not even shape my life, it might shape my kids' life or my kids' kids' lives, right? So we don't have that full, complete understanding. So although it seems bad to us, our perception is skewed because we don't have God's understanding of the world. We have our limited understanding of the world, and that perspective makes a whole lot of difference, which is what I talked about in the video that I just did on Job, where God essentially says to Job, hey, where were you when I created the universe? Do you understand everything? And if you do, then you have every right to judge me. But you don't. So you don't understand my plans or my ways, and you couldn't understand them even if you wanted to. It's kind of like trying to explain the universe to a cockroach. Cockroach is never going to understand what you're saying because it doesn't understand the information you're trying to relay to it. Yeah, not the world's greatest analogy, but it's one that I heard that kind of makes sense to me. All that being said, what I'm getting at here is Jesus knew the bigger picture. And although he knew Judas was going to betray him, and although it broke his heart, he had a 50-20 vision. He knew that Satan intended to enter Judas to make him turn him over to be crucified, which was a horrible thing. But without that, he couldn't rise again. He had to be turned over, he had to be crucified, he had to die so that he could defeat death and rise again to provide salvation for everyone, which is so much greater than the suffering he endured. So Jesus had the 50-20 vision, and I encourage you to have the 50-20 vision today as well. Well guys, that concludes today's Bible study. Again, I'm not a theologian, I don't have a seminary degree, I'm just a dude with a camera that's read a lot. If you heard something I said today that you disagree with, please don't hesitate to leave a comment and correct me. I'm happy to have that criticism. Also, if there's something that you saw that jumped out at you, that you really liked or really stuck with you, I need some encouragement too, guys. So please don't hesitate to leave a comment. I'd love to hear from you. Christian friends, as always, please continue to be the salt of the earth, be the light to the world, and go encourage someone else today, because the world truly, desperately needs it. And we need more people who are encouragers, because we've got tons of people who are Debbie Downers. So be different, and hopefully that difference will point to God. Guys, I really hope you enjoyed this video. I do truly hope you're well today, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye!